What's the difference between guilt and shame? And where can we find freedom from our shame? The Issues Etc. book of the month for August is From Shame to Glory, Surprising Remedy for Injustice and Failure. It's written by regular guest Dr. John Kleinig. From Shame to Glory is published by Concordia Publishing House. Their phone number 1-800-325-3040, or browse before you buy at issuesetc.org. From Shame to Glory, Surprising Remedy for Injustice and Failure, the Issues Etc. book of the month. We see the headlines. Of course, this is a story that's not going away. Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham won't be ignored. They want to hush you, Sophie Cunningham, on being a Christian in the NBA, and WNBA star Sophie Cunningham's faith bigger than the culture war. How are the media doing in covering this controversy in women's basketball? Welcome back to Issues Etc. I'm Todd Wilkin. Joining us to talk about media coverage of the religious faith of WNBA star Sophie Cunningham, Terry Mattingly. He's Senior Fellow on Communications and Culture at St. Constantine College in Houston, Texas. He writes Rational Sheep, a Substack newsletter on faith, family, and mass media. He's author of the National On Religion column for the Andrews McMeel Universal Syndicate, and for 2 decades, he led the GetReligion.org website. Terry, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Why aren't major newsrooms quoting Sophie Cunningham's faith statements?
Well, I mean, I'm sure lots of our listeners are going, #duh, because obviously this is all just about politics, right? This is all about Trump-era MAGA hat wearing, which she doesn't do, by the way. I mean, this has got to all be about her trying to just wave banners that sell her shirts and appeal to right-wing, white, blonde-loving weirdos out there in the heartland. But I'll be honest with you here. I had no idea about her faith background, let alone that there had been important developments in it within the last 12 months or so, until it was called to my attention by Clemente Lisi at Religion Unplugged. And I'm not surprised at all that when you look at her life through the lens of something like ESPN.com, it's going to be labeled automatically as politics. I mean, that's just not surprising. Anything important has to be seen as politics. I'll ask you a question. What percentage of the podcast that you and I have done in a dozen or more years do you think the issue of religion versus politics has come up?
Probably upper 90%.
I was going to say at least 50%. You know, when you're talking about somebody did something, somebody said something, they're a major public figure, it's political ideology. In fact, I think that if the Associated Press style book, if it had an item defining doctrine, it would be doctrine, noun, there would be a colon or a dash, and then it would say, see political ideology. When you're dealing with people who are famous and who are making big headlines, at some point it has to be politics, because otherwise it's not real, because politics is real and religion is not so real. There's that phrase you and I have been talking about for a long time. So in my own case, I did not know, and I have followed this story pretty closely. I've been following the Caitlin Clark story closely for 2 years, and I did not know that Sophie Cunningham had had changes in her life involving religion, and I certainly didn't know that she had talked about them in front of a microphone. I mean, right now there is no one in our cultural debates hotter than Sophie Cunningham. If you can watch the Sophie Cunningham tribute video about her pointing, at people, they turned her into the Statue of Liberty, etc. Do the Sophie, I think, is the name of that tune. And I don't think it's AI, by the way, on YouTube. So anyway, I had no idea about the religion angle of this story. And Yahoo Sports, I thought, wow, Yahoo Sports did a story. They picked up what I would consider a smaller, out-of-the-way sports website's coverage on this. And that points us to another part of this story. And I think the real question here is, why isn't the media talking about her religious faith if they're determined to talk about everything else about her? And part of it is I don't think major media wants to quote small media. As bitter as the divisions are right now between the world of social media, internet-based, YouTube, X platform media, I think they don't want to quote any of these interviews in which she has talked about her life and her faith. And get this, what she's looking for in a husband. Now that brings another big issue up that we can talk about. I think part of it is they don't want to use quotes attributed to other people. And I think right now, if someone from a major network walked up and stuck a microphone in her face and asked her to talk about her faith, I'm not sure how she would handle it. Because needless to say, and I've been getting lots of email about this, they're saying, Terry, why aren't you writing about the Sophie story? Why aren't you writing about this? It's obviously about religion. And what they're saying is that the cultural point of view of the WNBA is so culturally liberal that there has to be a religion angle in here somewhere. And lo and behold, apparently Sophie has addressed that.
This term culture war is, while coined by a kind of one of the bright lights of 1980s, 90s conservatism, has been kind of turned back on the conservative movement by the cultural left. It's code for your religious beliefs, but it's turned back on to say, because these are mere religious beliefs, no one needs to take them seriously. Talk about that use of...
Well, it's forcing your faith onto other people. And of course, court decisions that try to make, or executive actions or whatever, that try to make Roman Catholic nuns include transsexual surgery and birth control in their organization health plans, that isn't forcing beliefs onto anybody else. Or we can get into cake bakers in Colorado and et cetera, et cetera. And some of this is getting to the Supreme Court. In the case of the Colorado cake shop, it's been to the court now at least twice, I think, at this point. So anyway, the term originated with a very serious definition by the great sociologist, who is certainly someone who strives to be as politically neutral as he can, James Davison Hunter, in his book that I read right before I briefly taught at Denver Theological Seminary. I think the book came out in 90. It might be 91, but anyway, it was a bestseller. And the minute he put out his definition, which is a serious definition, which is that we live in an age in which the major divisions in religion are no longer between denominations. The divisions are usually inside religious denominations and traditions, and it's a division between people who believe that transcendent, eternal truth exists, and people who believe that truth is itself evolving and changing. And he called this the camp of the orthodox with a small o versus the camp of the progressives. That book changed how I saw my work. It changed almost everything about how I looked at journalism and politics when I first read it, because it described what I had been seeing on the religion beat for a decade or more. So anyway, you're right. The culture wars has now turned into a curse term. Culture wars person is someone who is trying to force their conservative religion on thinking, well-mannered people. People who are on the right side of history, to use another phrase. So, of course, Sophie is a culture war figure, but of course that means it's political. Because What else could it be? It couldn't be based on doctrine or something. And when you find out that she grew up Catholic in rural Missouri and went to Catholic school, and that then apparently sometime in the last year or two, she has begun to call herself a non-denominational Protestant, and she was baptized at a non-denom church outside of Phoenix and has talked about that openly, why she did it. So anyway, we're not making stuff up here, and it's not that hard to find it if you know that you need to dig it up. And in my case, it's hard to look up something if you don't know it exists, is one of my all-time phrases about journalism. I didn't know to look up Sophie Cunningham's faith, and now it turns out I'm really wondering, why isn't anybody writing about that part of the equation? And I'll say one other thing about that. Religion in the WNBA, it might be that everyone is scared to talk about it. And that could be, this is Mattingly's theory. I know because I follow the Lady Vols, the great basketball program down here in East Tennessee. The great Pat Summitt, the late great Pat Summitt, was perhaps the most important basketball coach in history, and I would stand by that. Pat Summitt pretty much created female athletics as we know it today, and certainly female hoops. But she also had a lot of outspoken Christians on her team, and most of them were African Americans. So I wouldn't be surprised that if you have a very loud, proud contingent, as everybody's been talking openly about it, you have woke black females, which in many people is code word for lesbian, and then you have some people openly saying that sexuality and gender is at the heart of the current debates. And now we have the whole, can men who claim, just say, hey, I feel like a woman today, can I play in the WNBA? We've had 2 first-round draft picks from the past NBA trying to apply, and they have applied to be in the WNBA draft coming this year, and trying to figure out what logic will be used to keep them out, because that will require defining the term woman. And we all know how hard that is these days. To back up then back to faith, I wouldn't be at all surprised right now if there is quite a bit of tension in the WNBA between outspoken African American Christian players and outspoken players in the league who are either politically liberal to the point they would clash with conservative Christianity, or for various reasons related to sexuality have problems with traditional forms of Christianity. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was just as much tension in the WNBA right now between black female Christian players and others. So it could be that talking about your faith has been declared completely out of bounds by the powers that be in the WNBA.
Terry Mattingly is our guest. We're talking about media coverage of the religious faith of WNBA star Sophie Cunningham. When we come back, how do a sports journalist cover the game itself when every part of the game has been politicized?
The church's music from the 20th century. The 17th century. The 11th century. The 8th century. The 4th century. The best of the church's music from the past 2,000 years. LutheranPublicRadio.org.
Solid, serious, substantive. You're listening to Issues, Etc.
For nearly 140 years, the Lutheran Witness has taught the faith, defended it against error, and shown forth the great treasures of the Lutheran Church and biblical doctrine. We're continuing this legacy by publishing issues and articles that help you see the world from a Lutheran perspective and that teach biblical doctrine and show forth the treasures of God's Word. Visit our website to learn more and how to subscribe, witness.lcms.org. The Lutheran Witness, helping you interpret the world from a Lutheran perspective.
Criticism.
Thank God that it's 5:01 and the show is over.
Commendation.
I am not a Lutheran, but I regularly listen to Issues, etc., and thank you for putting this on the air.
Conundrum.
A Catholic friend has come to our LCMS church, and he said, "Why do you say very God, a very God?" And I couldn't think of a good answer.
The Issues, etc. comment line, 618-223-8382.
Lutherans for Life equips the Lutherans and their neighbors to be gospel-motivated voices for life through their quarterly Life Date journal, national and regional conferences, frontline conference calls, and more. Find out more, lutheransforlife.org, lutheransforlife.org. We're talking about media coverage of the religious faith of WNBA star Sophie Cunningham. Terry Mattingly is our guest author of the National On Religion column. Terry, just in terms of covering the sport itself, the games themselves, how is a sports journalist supposed to cover the game, the play-by-play, when every play, every foul or ejection is a political event?
I don't know, because it's going to require you to investigate whether there are divisions between WNBA owners. And that's where it's going to come down to the fact that now the effort to define what is a woman, apparently the head of the league has said, I need input from our general managers and I need input from our owners. In other words, the question, what is a woman, is above my pay grade. And I'm the head of the W, I think that stands for woman, NBA. I was watching Sage Steele in a YouTube clip about an hour or two ago, and she was noting that the WNBA actually dates back several decades. And at the time it was created and they wrote their charter and they wrote their bylaws, you didn't need to define a woman at that stage. And so they didn't. So now they face legal issues over the meaning of the word woman in terms of who is eligible to play in their league and be drafted to play in their league or not. Now they need to define the word woman. And so this is one of the biggest issues in American culture right now. We're heading into midterm elections, and yes, I just made a political reference. I don't think this is going anywhere. And I won't get into the name of the team, but you might look that someone with a lot of money is trying to create a WNBA team in Nashville. And it's not Elon Musk, although that would be fun, and has come up with an interesting concept. We'll be the most diverse team in the league. Every player on my team will be a trans woman. All of them. Defined the way you're currently defining woman, which in their political remarks, the WNBA officials are trying really hard not to clash with the current, I guess we can call it woke definition of woman, which is a woman is someone who says they're a woman. And for legal purposes in schools, they might even believe they're female on one day and male the next and then female the next. It's all about their self-identity and feelings. At which point, a bunch of people are saying, okay, see you in court. See you in court. Try to keep me out. Here's another wrinkle I just heard about in coverage of this. It was in that same Sage Steele clip. The average salary under the Caitlin Clark era renegotiated TV contract and player contract, I believe the base salary in the WNBA now is $500,000, $500,000. The base salary for the second level, the G League of the NBA, no W, NBA, The guys who play in that league, their base salary is $45,000. So do you think we're going to find some players, second-level players, who aren't going to get drafted high in the NBA draft? Do you think we're going to have anybody else try to apply for the WNBA draft?
Well, I even quipped about that the other day that, we may be looking in the next couple of years at an all-male WNBA team, because that's an economic opportunity no one would want to pass by. And these guys, if they're judging by the standards that exist now and whether or not they can score points, these guys will make it.
And what happens if somebody decides to start an international women's basketball league? I don't know. The London team, the England team, could be owned by J.K. Rowling. She probably has enough money around. Martina Navratilova could probably afford to start a team, and Elon Musk certainly could. So what if you have an international women's basketball league, and its first player that is signed to play for one of its teams is Caitlin Clark, and Sophie's number 2. And they say, we are adapting a definition of woman as a definition of woman, the one that's currently used by the Olympics, which is a one-time DNA test. You take a DNA test. If it comes back female, you can play in our league. But that's controversial because it doesn't define it according to gender ideology on self-conception and self-belief, self-identity. So you and I are way away from the original topic here, which I want to get back to just briefly. But at this point, we just have to say the story is not going to go away, and at some point, Sophie's going to get asked about it again.
So I wanted to take you back to that moment that kind of cemented her place in the world of memes, that finger point.
Yeah.
It's almost like the iconic photo of Muhammad Ali after he's knocked down, I think it was Joe Frazier or somebody. And it becomes an icon of the story. How would you, if you're just a reporter saying, explain to me what that picture is all about, this tall blonde pointing at an opposite team member. What is that story?
Well, it's obviously about racism. She's obviously saying, I'm pointing at a bad black female player, and I want the whole world to look at her, and I want the whole world to know she did something wrong. Oh, and probably it's okay with me if everybody sends her death threats. It has to be seen that way because that's what's real. And she just said she did it because she wanted to find a way to walk away but not let the foul that just occurred. I believe that was the fist to the neck foul on Caitlin Clark that was at the heart of all that. And she didn't realize that she was creating the meme of the year. I wrote down in my notes something that wouldn't make a bad headline. If Sophie points to God, who will notice? And that's part of the issue. Right now, isn't anything Sophie talks about supposed to be news? And she's also, of course, been subject to rumors about her private life. And I think another reason the press doesn't want to talk about this is there have been rumors about her own sexual identity in the past because she's not married and not dating. Well, the other day she stood up and said, I'm not dating because I'm a player in the WNBA. I'm extremely busy right now, but let me describe for you what kind of husband I'm looking for. And besides the fact, she said it really helps if he's taller than 6'2", which she's 6'1" herself, verging on 6'2". She said, I'd like to be able to look up to my husband in more ways than one. I think I'm paraphrasing her at this point. And that also could be a joking reference about the whole deal of girls saying that on their dating apps that they want to date somebody taller than 6 feet tall. But anyway, Sophie came right out and said, I'm looking for a man who I can marry and look up to, someone who can be a leader, someone who will back me in my beliefs and back me in what I do and wants to start a family the way I hope to start a family. Well, that strikes me as newsworthy in the current situation. And if we're going to have people writing about rumors about her private life, why don't we have the one time she said, here's something about my private life. And then she also did an interview. I'm looking at a copy of it right now on Sportcast Media, why I decided to get baptized. That sounds quotable to me because she just comes out and answers.
So I would like you to make the case, given the fact that this is a story that's not going away. It is, albeit a kind of a, I think most people would say, not a major sports story, but definitely an interesting sports story. Make the case why an outfit like ESPN should hire a religion reporter.
Oh, my goodness. That should be obvious at this point. I could nominate a few. You can't cover soccer in the world right now without talking about religion. You can't cover the NFL at all without dealing with religion. We've just come through a period of time when some of the best-known players in basketball were outspoken about their Christian, and many of them are now toward the end of their careers. Steph Curry leaps to mind. But at this point, if you look at the number of times ESPN has failed to cover a story or gotten a shallow version of a very important story because they didn't ask the religion questions. And of course, they're worried because at some point they're going to be quoting outspoken, articulate, African-American superstars who are conservative Christians. And that would just be the end of the world. And I don't know how they would quote those people. And so I think it'll continue to be the haunted field, even more than regular news right now. Sports coverage will continue to be absolutely haunted by the fact that the elite media covering the sport are scared to look at religion issues in their sport. And I can't make a case for it because I don't think there's anything I can say other than analyze your own work, maybe even do a search of 20 years at Get Religion, and look at how many stories you've missed. At least get yourself a really first-class freelance reporter to write about this. And I'll name two, okay? I bet you Bobby Ross, formerly of Get Religion and writes a lot for Religion Unplugged and is a major journalist, the head of that. He's editor of the newspaper of the Churches of Christ. I bet Bobby would kill to get to write freelance stories about baseball related to religion. And then Clemente Lisi, the editor of Religion Unplugged and another Get Religionista, he writes about football/soccer at the international level and writes openly about the role that religion plays in those fields. Call those two professionals up and say, name me 5 reporters that we could put on the beat part-time. We'll pay them good money per story. Let's get down to doing this. It would be very easy to do it.
Terry Mattingly is Senior Fellow on Communications and Culture at St. Constantine College in Houston, Texas. He writes Rational Sheep, a Substack newsletter on faith, family, and mass media. He's author of the National On Religion column for the Andrews McMeel Universal Syndicate, and for 2 decades, he led the GetReligion.org website. Terry, thanks.
Glad to be here.
We will respond to your email and the Issues Etc. comment line after the break.
Looking for high-quality church music settings? Look no further than Concordia Publishing House. We have award-winning settings for handbell, organ, piano, and choral groups, featuring a wide variety of options for the entire church year. Visit cph.org/music to find a great setting today.
The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod cares deeply for those who protect our nation. Are you or a loved one currently serving? Ministry to the Armed Forces would like to help. We provide devotional literature to encourage faith. Send your mailing address to lcmschaps@lcms.org or call us at 314-996-1337. Those in uniform are comforted with Psalm 28. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in Him, and He helps me.
Essential exercise for the Christian mind. You're listening to Issues Etc.
This is Pastor Matthew Harrison. president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The LCMS operates the second largest parochial school system in the United States. What can you expect from a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod school? There's one race, the human race. And Jesus died for the sins of every man, woman, and child from every land and every nation. Life begins at conception. All life is precious from womb to tomb, and every student, parent, and teacher is created in the very image of God. There's right and wrong, and we know which is which from the Ten Commandments. There are only two sexes, male and female. He created them. Marriage is the lifelong union of one man and one woman. There's such a thing as objective, absolute truth, and it's found in the person and work of Jesus Christ and His Word. To find a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod school near you, visit lcms.org/schools.